All right, guys, welcome to another delay. I, of course, was looking at the screen like a moron. And this is another exciting stream, another gem, another piece of fucking furniture, sweet furniture that you found on the street when you needed to move. It's a it's an amazing wellspring in the desert of life, in the desert where nothing is real and nothing is tender. We're tender and we're real. And our stream is a salty stream, so because it's made out of tears. And so if you were to find it in the desert, I guess it wouldn't nurture you because you would just have the salty tears. But I guess a hope of water, some sort of an idea of water even is better than nothing. Mr. Robbins, is that correct?
It all sounds good to me.
Yes, it made no sense, but you went along. This is good. It's kind of like good dictatorship should function. And today we have a very special guest. Now, we tried to get her multiple times, Mr. Robbins. She was very elusive. We were lied to on a number of occasions when we tried to connect with her. But today, I guess out of shyness, she did agree to join us on the stream. And Mr. Robbins, you know who I'm talking
I
about.
know. I think I know who you're talking about. The eminent Meghan Merkel.
Yes, Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, and Meghan. It is just an unbelievable pleasure. I mean, no, with certain events and certain people, it's no longer how long the wait. What matters that we finally connected, finally. And I would just like to ask you, what's going on with the fucking kid? I want to know when's the kid coming along? What the fuck, the little Duke, whatever the fuck when he's coming along, and of course, want to ask a few questions about preserving the monarchy in Canada. Megan, please don't be shy with your thoughts.
I think that we should do away with the monarchy and possibly just the entire system altogether. We should just start over again.
Well, Megan is certainly in a kind of a edgy mood today, I guess. A little sassy today. It's Brian. Brian has been a subscriber to my channel, although for a few months now I didn't see a lot of comments from Brian, almost as if he found other content to watch. How could it almost as if there are other things happening. And recently I posted a fucking post on Facebook and elsewhere asking for any assistance about helping me to kind of navigate potentially venturing video editing. And Brian has been kind enough to offer his assistance. And we connected at that point, and Brian told me a few things about video editing that was very useful. And another subscriber, Aaron, also connected me with a relative of his who was knowledgeable about video editing. And Brian has been very helpful. Unfortunately, there was one minus to his presentation, is that it kind of implied work. There was an implicit you had
True.
to
It's true. There's actually a lot of work to it.
yeah, work and do things and kind of learn things. That was kind of a downer, that part of it. But aside from that, it was very fancy and nice. So how would you introduce yourself, Brian?
Sure. So I have a channel called the Stalmer Street Journal, and I did a bunch of videos. There's almost nothing on there now. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with it. But I've been a subscriber of Ivan's for a long time. And in the past, I had commented quite a bit. I even sent you, I don't know if you remember this, but I actually sent you a couple of messages back when YouTube had messaging. I don't know if you remember. I sent you a couple of messages, and I loved your points in your videos and stuff, and the way you approached it, which to me was the only way to critique some of these things was with a sense of humor,
Yeah.
And
but then it got a little dry. It got a little kind of same shit again, eh?
When did it didn't, you know what? It didn't really dry up for me as much as I had much more significant shit in my life to do. But I'm back,
Okay.
and now I can be active with the YouTubes again.
Okay. All right. Well, that was good enough of an excuse. And Brian is going to tell us some amazing things today, about his time working in a strip club, not as a performer. Uh,
Right. Not as
yeah.
a performer.
Yeah, and so this is exciting. We even have some video. I have prepared some video that we're gonna watch, so that's gonna be exciting. He will discuss being a stay-at-home dad and the tension there, with perhaps some old school gender roles that Mr. Robbins, for example, adheres to. And
Oh no.
yeah, and we'll talk about some supernatural experiences Brian had, and maybe some other topics as well. We have a few topics here, but of course, before we do, not only will I have to ramble a little bit about my life, which was going to be infinitely less interesting than what Brian has up his sleeve. But aside from that, I do want to bring a few things up as Sam Harris would say in his podcast. Let's do a little bit of housekeeping. Now, Mr. Robbins, are you familiar with the Mahayana Buddhist Bodhisattva Manjushri?
No, this is foreign to me.
Okay. Manjushri is a bodhisattva of wisdom. And do you know, Mr. Robbins, if you were to guess a bodhisattva of wisdom, a deity invoked to progress on the path of enlightenment, what this bodhisattva would hold in its hand?
I'm having a little hard time hearing you.
Okay, what would this bodhisattva hold in its hand? Can you hear me?
Yes, fistful of dollars.
A fistful of dollars? No, it's actually going to be a sword. I guess, but I like your reference to the future topics in the stream. And Mr. Robbins, do you know the direction that the sword of wisdom, the sword that slashes through illusions, where it's going to land today and what direction it's heading?
Directly north.
No, Mr. Robbins. It's heading directly for your ass, fake news Robbins.
What?
Okay, I'm ready. I'm prepared.
Okay, you have been using my stream to promote and spread your Russophobic lies, and it's going to end today. You do know what I'm talking about.
Well, I've probably spread more than one, so...
Well, anyway, those of you who had the misfortune of, following the stream for a while, have maybe watching a few of them, may have been familiar with, may have been familiar with kind of a theme that I have been promoting. The kind of idea that the Democrats got too distracted by the whole Russia probe, and then they went on a big kind of a big kind of rabbit hole into this preoccupation that detached them from real politics, and they kind of went along with that with the sort of a narrative of justice is going to prevail against collusion and so on. And I went on these unhinged rambles on a couple of streams in a row, and I will not, once again, I started rambling in that direction, but I will not subject you to this misery now. But last time, I have, it was a post-Mueller report rant where I said kind of two things. I said that there were two conclusions in that report. One was that there was no evidence of collusion, and then the second conclusion was that they did not make a ultimate decision on whether Trump impeded or interfered with the investigation, but they did not refer him for prosecution. So those were the two things. And then Mr. Robbins decided to interject and say that there was some collusion. And then somebody in the chat has also said that no, they didn't make a decision about collusion. It was indeterminate. Now, nobody really, whoever is listening to this, and neither Mr. Robbins nor Brian could possibly give a shit about the Mueller report at this point. But just because facts are important to me and challenging fake news is important to me, I will highlight the fact that there is this quote in the Mueller report. Ultimately, the investigation did not establish that the Trump campaign coordinate or conspired with the Russian government in its election interference activities. So, so they didn't find any evidence that there was any collusion. However, there was that meeting between Trump Jr. and some Russian lady who potentially had some damaging information on Hillary Clinton gathered by the Russian government. If you want to consider that to be collusion or intent to collude, even though that meeting turned out to be entirely useless and she had nothing, that's fine, but that's not what people talk about collusion when they talk about collusion. Well, anyway, I guess I just wanted to point out, this tidbit of factual information. Doesn't mean that Trump isn't an asshole or that he shouldn't be impeached or anything. But I was 100% right on what I said in regards to the Mueller report. My friends, any commentary? Mr. Robbins, would you like to offer anything in your defense on this point?
No, I don't want to. I don't want to make an excuse that I misspoke. But yeah, my understanding from the beginning, and maybe I just didn't lay it out correctly, was that there was no proof of collusion.
Okay.
There certainly seems to be evidence that something was going on, but the report itself, you're 100% correct, and that was my thinking even a week ago, that there was nothing within the report that said there was any evidence of direct collusion.
All right. And now, Brian, any thoughts on this Mueller report?
So basically, what you're saying is that Mr. Robbins is fake news, right?
I said, yeah, fake news Robbins. But no, I mean, there was just some confusion on that point. They didn't find any evidence of collusion, but I mean, the campaign included a lot of shady fucks who would work with Russia, unfortunately, given the Putin's regime, and some people who tried to suck up to the Russian government and were, at one point that Brian, whatever his face, they wanted to recruit him, but concluded that he was an idiot. But this was before he joined the Trump campaign, and he was not a high-ranking official, and there's no evidence that while he was at the Trump campaign, he colluded with anyone, and he was never prosecuted because he was never an active agent. But they did try to recruit that one guy, and Trump did try to, get a tower in Moscow. But anyway, I just wanted to clarify those things in case anybody cared about the Mueller report any longer, but I don't suspect that they do. I'm not saying that it shouldn't have been investigated, and I'm definitely not saying that Russia didn't interfere. I'm just saying that this kind of the grand shadow of the pterodactyl of justice of conspiracy that we were all living under in the left might not have been such a great idea. But anyway, let's move on. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is there it is my work. Now, I've recently received a driving report, a driving safety scorecard from my work. And this is another time, Mr. Robbins, that you will have the opportunity to make a pointless guess that you never want to make. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, so this is how this baby works. This is the safety scorecard, and you get 5 points if you have 1 point per hour event point that is measured by the GPS in the car. And if you have more than 10 points, you get 1 star. So that's not good. And there are some points in between, of course. And so you get 2 points for any acceleration event. That is when you speed up to 9 miles an hour and whatever in a few seconds or something like that. And you get 10 points for a deceleration event when you rapidly slow down. And all right, so I do have a sum of my event points per hour. Now, Mr. Robbins, you have heard the description. Would you offer a guess? You have rode with me in a vehicle before as to how many points per hour I have.
Okay, so the higher the number of points between 1 and 0, the worse your driving record.
It's not confined to 0 to 10. It goes beyond 10. The higher it is, the worse off you are, yes.
Okay.
This is events I have per hour, so 2 points for when I accelerate too fast, 10 points when I decelerate too fast. And this is on a per hour basis, an average over 18 hours of driving.
Well, I'm going to have to say you've accumulated some points.
Well, let's take a guess.
I'll go with 8.
8 an hour.
Yes.
Brian?
20.
77. 77.
Wow.
Yes, so I have some notes here that they provided for me. The first one is one provided by the automated machine itself. Safety risk. You need to improve this by watching out for hard decels. And then I have some handwritten notes here from my Chad supervisor, Josh. So this is what Josh put down here. Really need to correct this. Driving need to be smooth when accelerating and braking. Hard decelerations are hard, tough on the vehicle, and is dangerous. Give yourself more time to stop and more following space. Extreme. All right. Okay, so it's not hard pressed at times. Anyways, just my edgy driving. I do plan to bullshit my way through this, trying to kind of find the sweet spot. But it's not me accelerating in front of cars. It's just accelerating as fast as I can around corners and so on, and then quickly stopping by the side of the street. So like I don't slow down. And it's just when it's not your car, that was my one real joy in life, is fucking racing around on these Sonics as fast as I could. I guess I still can hit the gas on the highway and just ram out the edge, and because of course and they didn't have this for my first 2 months of driving, and now I guess the stupid system came online. Thankfully, they didn't fix their system that tracks speed, because then I would have like 200 points on that. Yeah. Brian, any thoughts on this report?
Is your job dependent on these safety reports in any way?
Well, yeah, I think of over time it could be dependent. It's not something
even without accidents.
Yeah, I mean, they would statistically correlate with accidents, presumably. That's why they're doing it. But in my case, it's not like I'm reacting suddenly to another car. It's just the style of driving that I do when it's not my car.
It just sounds like Big Brother bullshit to me.
Yeah. Yes, well, I mean, they do own these vehicles, so I guess constantly being rough on the brakes is bad, but it is fucking annoying, because I do just like to gas up that baby. I mean, it doesn't have that much horsepower, those fucking Sonics. But yeah, it's I have been now braking much slower, trying to accelerate at a slower pace, but I'm not a unsafe driver. I've been driving my windowless cargo van I put over 20,000 miles on it without any accidents or speeding tickets. Mr. Robbins, any final thoughts on this report?
No. Maybe you can find some sort of hack.
A life hack, yeah. Yeah, it's just going to be slowing down more, and that's basically it. All right, so one of the things I do at my job is they send me on different routes, and my schedule isn't finalized. And on these routes, you learn with a driver that is already on them. So the end result is that I end up driving around with a bunch of guys for hours and hours. I start spending 6-10 hours with another kind of middle-aged old man, and I learned from them, and I guess they learned from me, and it's pretty much a total waste of time. So one of the guys I've been driving around with recently was Chris, and we had a route where we were on call. It's the route I did today when sometimes nothing is happening, and so we would sit around together in the car for hours by different in different parking lots of different hospitals. And I did so today as well, just vaped and listened to podcasts for hours in the parking lots of Good Samaritan and hospitals, among others. And this is what we were doing back then, except I didn't vape with him in the car. And we didn't listen to podcasts. And what happened instead is that I was forced into showing him a video of mine because I was yapping too much. We had nothing to talk about. We were talking about the alt-right and how they're kind of going after their critics online, or how they're being censored, etc. And I kind of told him the story about my Richard Spencer video. And Mr. Robbins, you remember what happened there?
In the Richard Spencer video?
What happened to it?
Oh, yes. It was it completely taken down, or just in certain countries?
Yes, it was flagged and taken down for extremist content, even though I was criticizing Richard Spencer. And I was telling him this, and he's like, well, let's see the video. And normally I wouldn't want to talk about my channel at all at work, but this time it's just because nothing was happening. We were just yapping for so long that it slipped out. And so I started showing him this this video. And within this video, it begins by me pretending to be a white supremacist, a kind of a bullshit, kind of a skit that whatever. And I kind of go on to say, like, so here you are, my white brother. You're standing at a bus stop, and there is a black man there. And, he might be a hoodlum. He might be a ghetto hipster. But there is no reason to be fucking dart your eyes or look to the sidelines. Be proud of yourself. Walk around like you invented the toaster. Now, I completely forgot about this part of the video because I don't rewatch my shit ever. But this was especially awkward, Mr. Robbins, because Chris happened to be black. And I was like, oh, fucking shit. But he did understand the joke in the video, and he kind of liked it. I mean, as far as, like, it wasn't clearly, like, necessarily his kind of thing, but he did say, like, I don't have to be driving for this company, etc. But this was one awkward moment. Mr. Robbins, would this be odd for you if this were to happen to you, when you would show some video and something like that would pop up, something awkward like that?
Yeah, that would be a hard one to try to backpedal out of. But it sounds like he let you slide through it.
Yeah, he did laugh pretty hardly when I said that I wouldn't let Italians into the ethno state. Brian, what are your thoughts about this? Would you feel awkward if this were to happen to you, if you were showing a video of yourself with content you completely forgot?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably pre-filter with, gauging whether the person had a sense of humor or not. And then if they did, you'd probably be able to roll with it, even though it might be a little bit awkward. Yeah, I can see how it would still be strange.
It was super strange because I had no plans to show this video. I fucking forgot entirely what was in it. And aside from that, I do have like a persona of like a South Korean exchange student at work, a lot of shy laughter, a lot of sort of, non-confrontational statements. And then the most awkward thing about it is that when we were done watching this video and I'm like, fuck you, and all this shit, I just go back to being that shy persona again, and we just continue with the day. Thankfully, it was my last day training with Chris, who's a really nice guy and an interesting guy. But recently, actually this week, I have another driver who's again showing me a new route, and his name is Jeff. And Jeff has really made me sort of, I don't know, it was odd driving with him because when I was riding along with him, my persona kind of cracked. And I couldn't really maintain this kind of South Korean immigrant thing that I do. And for the first time in years, since like 2012, I was actually interacting with a person at work kind of in the way that I do now, or like in real interactions. And I found this very unpleasant. Not because of Jeff was unpleasant. I like Jeff a lot, and I think he's a clever guy. But I just felt a certain vulnerability and tenderness at work that I don't like. I guess it turned out that I like my bullshit one-dimensional persona at work because it makes the whole thing more kind of sanitized. I just slide in there and slide out of there, and like nobody really knows who I am. And now it seems like Jeff is digging into it and is beginning to unravel it. So Jeff is half black and half Italian. I almost said half white and half Italian, but anyway. And he's a kind of a pretty funny guy. Like when we were pulling out, he's like Ivan, we're gonna be heading to the hood. Are you scared? And he's like, yeah. He's like, well, they're not gonna go after you. They're gonna say, well, he doesn't know how to fight, but he's pretty tall, so we're not going after him. So of course we actually didn't go through the hood. We just kind of drove through the hood as usual. Just fucking went to the good old fucking Good Samaritan hospital as always to pick up some shit. Yeah, so then later on we're kind of driving, and Jeff was like, now Ivan, would you tell anybody if I were to light a joint in here? And I was like, no. He's like, are you sure? I was like, no. He's like, Ivan, are you sure? And I was like, snitches get stitches. And this already here kind of was like where Jeff got me to say something I would never say with any other driver. Of course, none of them would have this conversation with me. But anyway, he's like, ooh, Ivan, where did you learn that expression? Anyway, so all he wanted to do was smoke in the car. That was his little test where he went to marijuana as a kind of a joke. And then we were just kind of sitting together and like smoking, and he was smoking, I was vaping. But yeah, so we just kind of got to talking, and Jeff overall, like, I think his kind of biracial, I don't know, situation and the fact that he lived in Germany for 10 years gives him a certain kind of detached outsider perspective. And in that sense, he like comfortably could crack into my kind of existence and kind of connect with more of the shady aspect of myself that I actually don't want to share. It turned out I felt kind of trapped by my kind of exchange student persona, but now it's kind of like, now that it's kind of gone, I'm afraid of what Jeff is gonna find out, because Jeff already joked. He's like, where do you live, Ivan? Do you live in a commune with incels? Because we were talking about incels before. But I would say that the one thing about Jeff that kind of takes off his kind of cool pants persona is that Jeff is a bit thirsty. I mean, Jeff is like 63 years old, he told me, and he's a bit too thirsty. Like, we went to Oxford, Ohio here. Mr. Robbins, I'm sure, knows it's a college town, and there are like a lot of ladies there, attractive ladies naturally. And like every time like a girl would pass, he was like, "Oh, she's nice," and it's like some things shouldn't be vocalized. I don't feel. And he also kind of started discussing like this one girl at one of the hospitals we go to. She works at a lab, and she's like, "Well, Ivan, what do you think of that girl?" And she's a cute girl. Like, I have my own stupid standards, but she's an objectively a cute girl. Like, and the first thing I said was yoga pants, because she was like fucking wearing yoga pants at work, which makes it sound like I'm obsessed with them. But anyway, Jeff was like, "Do you mind it?" But anyway, I don't mind it. It was just weird to work in an office environment and wear yoga pants, but and kind of in the lab in a hospital. But whatever. This is my kind of observations. But Jeff really seems to be like preoccupied with her. and like he was talking with some other girl, according to him, like in the storage room next to the lab, about how that girl is like single and looking for somebody. And it's like, Jeff, what the fuck are you doing, man? You're fucking 63 years old. That girl is like in her mid mid 20s to early 30s or something. Like, what are you, fucking nuts? Now, I didn't tell him that, but it was just kind of odd to listen to Jeff. Like, Jeff's a cool enough guy. If he had money, he could get like a younger lady, but as is, not gonna happen now. So that's kind of my experience with Jeff. And I kind of sort of dread going on another trip with him. Like, what else is he gonna discover about me? It's just odd walking through the office and seeing Jeff there, and he knows exactly who I am. Now, Brian, you ever had the situation where you didn't want people to know who you are, or am I a psychopath?
No, you're not a psychopath. This is pretty common in my experience too, where you go to do a job, you're there to do a certain thing, and someone might make a joke or something, and you crack. You start to show your actual self, your authentic self, right?
Yeah.
And if it's not something that you're used to showing, and you're not really interested in people getting to know you or anything like that, then I feel like it can be a little difficult to sort of reestablish that disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally see what you're saying. I don't think it's really happened with me because I guess I don't know. I don't have the Iron Curtain. I don't have the thing blocked most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I probably say shit that I shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And people have told me, and these are just salespeople, that I'm just rough around the edges,
Mm-hmm.
And I think primarily it's because I just don't care what people think, really. And I know that can be unprofessional and bad and stuff, but I don't see why I need to care about what people are thinking of me in these types of situations. It's like I'm here to do a thing.
Yeah.
I have a particular skill set. Let me just do it, get out of my way, and then we can all be happy because the thing is accomplished,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Flancorp said they're gonna train you to drive like an old lady. Yeah, they're gonna train me like to drive, like going to a prostate exam. But I don't know. I guess, I mean, it is work. Like, I do just treat it like fucking driving around like an asshole and fucking vaping. It's too much. I already basically like listened to 101.1 The Wiz, which is like the rap station, and I'm fucking every fucking ad on that station is a fucking scam. No wonder we have such race relation. Every fucking ad on that fucking station is a fucking scam. Every other ad, it's always like some,
loans.
yeah, it's like fucking loans, some shitty fucking lawyers, shit like that. I mean, it's interesting to listen to. I would rather fucking, it's a good station all around. Though they do play that one Ariana Grande 2 Chainz song over and over again, and it's just the dumbest fucking song. I think it's 2 Chainz, where he just starts to like basically talk in there instead of singing. He's like, I love you. Used to kill people. I like
So he's
fucking,
not even rapping.
yeah. He's like, I like casein protein because it's good to take overnight. Keeps the protein synthesis going. I mean, he just kind of goes on that shit. It's a fucking horrible song. Well, anyway, now, Mr. Robbins, what about your persona? Now, would you want anybody whatsoever, let's say, at your work to hear this stream or any other stream of ours?
No, I definitely keep that one under wraps. I think there are hints to a lot of the people that I work with that there's maybe a little more going on below the surface than I let on with my personality. And I found a few people, one guy in particular at my newest job who, he and I can go off on some kind of different things that we don't share with everybody else. And I personally find that kind of refreshing, to find those people here and there and find somebody to kind of goof around with in ways that you wouldn't most everyone else. So
I don't know. Something about it makes me feel naked. Like I kind of want to get in and get out of work somehow. Like this is odd. Well, the other thing about Jeff that I did find a little bit unnerving is his preoccupation with the ladies. Now, he wasn't a sexist. In fact, who was that? Stephen? Who's that guy that Trump is trying to nominate to the Federal Reserve? Who like said all these sexist things?
I don't know.
No idea.
Yes. Yeah. So he's just this fucking old nerdy fucking economist who would, like, back in the day, write all the sexist shit in National Review about women. And Jeff was like, well, he's one of them. He's one of those fucking incels. He said, those guys, him and Mike Pence are sick. The only way they can have sex with their wives is by raping them.
It's horrifyingly true.
I like Jeff. I mean, he is funny, but he definitely made a stand against sexism, but he was kind of like, at first I thought he was kidding with that young young woman who works at a lab, because he was like, well, we were talking about where to meet people, and I told him, church is an easy place, like the easiest place to meet people. Like, I went to the Buddhist temple and I always kind of met people there. And he's like, yeah, maybe I should take that girl to church, to the Pentecostal church. Anyway, but at first I thought he was kidding, but then I was like, holy shit, he's serious. But another thing, like, he kind of forced me into sharing my opinions about different ladies at the lab, which I really had no desire to do whatsoever. So it is, of course, a casual way of like bonding. An easy thing to go to is to share your opinions about the appearance of women. But I don't really like doing it unless it's really close friends, where it's kind of grandfathered in, and you know that you're just two fucking goofballs who hardly ever have sex, and it like doesn't matter. But with another man, it kind of feels dirty. It feels dirty to do it. Mr. Robbins, do you feel the same? If you were in a similar position at a new job and somebody started talking about the ladies at the office, how would that make you feel?
Yeah, you've got to get a feel for who you're dealing with first. You've got to kind of get that sense that this is the kind of thing that's going to stay between you and I, right?
But aside from that, I mean, it's going to stay between you and I. But like, just the process itself.
No, I wouldn't say it creeps me out too much. The guy I'm talking about, we have fairly frequent conversations about those kind of things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I guess it's sort of like I'm growing more puritanical when it comes to these things. I just feel that certain things need to be unsaid. All right, then, Brian.
Yeah, it all depends on someone's character and where their motivation lies.
You sound like John Kennedy now when it
comes. This is the thing, is that I've had people that I can say horrible things about other human beings, and they know fundamentally that I'm joking around and that they can joke with me.
Yeah.
But then I've had people. I had a guy walk into my office that I didn't really know very well, and he started asking my opinions of the women that he worked with the other salespeople, who are generally attractive. The salespeople are just generally attractive, whether they be male or female. And so he wanted to know my opinion, and he had only been working there for like a month. And it wasn't too long after that I recognized him as a misogynist. And this was confirmed when he basically walked into my office and said that all women are cum dumpsters. I was like,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's no he didn't beat around the bush with that one.
So I basically told him, you know, like he told me his number, right? Like he came in one day and told me his number, the number of women that he slept with, right? And I was just like, John, like, I'm not gonna play your fucking game, dude. Like, you're an idiot. Like, leave me alone unless you have something for me to do. And there's an example of me giving a little bit too much there, a little rough around the edges there, Brian.
No, I mean the dude kind of sounds like a rapist, frankly, with that
Yes,
statement. That's not
exactly.
even like casual misogyny.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fucked up. Yeah, I mean, definitely Jeff is a nice guy, and he wouldn't say something like that. It's just kind of always odd. Like on the one hand, like Jeff is kind of a cool guy. Like he dresses well, even with our shitty uniform. He wears like little hipster, kind of hipsterish type pants, and has nice like classic Adidas. So he's a really cool guy, and he knows how to talk with these ladies. I mean, Jeff, I'm sure had a good run back in the day. But it's just now, it's always kind of odd because I just want that to die in me at some point. Like when I'm in my 60s, I don't want to look for ladies at the office or anything like that too much, and kind of, have some deluded fantasy about like this 20-something girl going out with me. So that it's always kind of odd when older men talk to me about women. It's like even if I had any game whatsoever, it would be hard for me to romance that girl because, I mean, we're fucking wearing a uniform, and there's nothing more goofy than just dudes who come in with giant mailbags filled with urine and blood for this girl. But the point is, and if any ladies whatsoever are listening, is don't wear yoga pants at work. Even with pockets, it still attracts creepy attention. The final thing I'll say is about narcissism. Like before we move on to something actually interesting, like Brian working at a strip club. But the last thing I'll ramble about myself here is there are two levels of narcissism. Like one is the one where you just openly praise yourself. And the other one is like the Woody Allen school with the self-deprecating bullshit where you draw attention to yourself by shitting on yourself, but not really. It's kind of like when I have my shit about, I'm a moron. I went to a community college. And of course, the reaction a person should have is like, oh, Ivan, it's like, it's ironic that he went to a community college because he's so smart. So it's a roundabout way of like praising yourself with your own neurosis. And the other aspect of it that I've realized with Jeff is that when I always ride around with these guys, like I always try to listen to their stories. And it's amazing to me how narcissistic these men are in a kind of a baseline level. That is to say, they very rarely ask you any questions about yourself. Like I could listen literally for hours to them, and they wouldn't ask like one thing about me.
Yeah.
Like in one case, he didn't ask me even where I was from, in spite of the accent or something. We just rode around, and he told me about his marriage. And however, like with Jeff, I realized that the next level of narcissism is actually what I was doing. That is to say, like sit there in the back and try to dissect the other person like a fly. And it was Jeff who was fucking asking the questions of me, and I felt analyzed by him, like it was kind of a card game. And I guess, when I was scheming and analyzing the other guys, I sort of didn't see the kind of the narcissism in it, because like people have no idea who I was. Like at my last job, one time, like I was transporting shit on my cargo van, car parts, and he gave me a little box, the guy, to take to another store. And I mean, it was a little box going into the cargo van. And I said, well, I have the right car for this. That was the joke. And this guy, Dennis, like an older guy, he was like, ho, 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 look at him. He has a sense of humor. Like he really was like surprised that I would make this kind of a joke. And it's like, dude, I do have a sense of humor. Mr. Robbins, thoughts about this narcissism? Is it more narcissistic to yap about your life, or to carefully analyze it like a lizard from the sidelines?
Probably to go on and on and on about yourself. I mean, that's the most obvious sort. But as you're talking about this, it's interesting how, or I'm thinking about how, like, at least in a lot of places I've worked, people tend to like segregate into little groups where the kind of things that we're talking about are either accepted or they're not. It's kind of like these little social, not hierarchies, but yeah, little social groups form where the things that as people find out about you and you find out about who they really are, you sort of organically start to fall into these little groups, almost like high school all over again.
So there is an equal distribution of knowledge. There is an equal kind of market of knowledge. It's not like somebody is gobbling up all the knowledge and judgments about the other person because they are just talking all the time.
I mean, there are those elements. I mean, I see people forming little groups where, like, there's kind of like the alpha within the group who can come in and be loudmouthed about the most insipid stuff.
No, but I mean, as far as the information exchange, like the alpha in the narcissistic schema that I'm describing would be the one who, like, it's like I know more about Brian, whereas Brian just knows me as a kind of one-dimensional immigrant, and therefore I'm the winner of this game because now I can pass internal judgments and have a three-dimension. He gave up his three-dimensionality by yapping. So
Yeah,
you're saying in your kind of subgroups, people have equal information about each other.
I think so. See, I'm having a hard time with that one because just last night I sat down with a group of people too I was completely unfamiliar with, friends of friends. And I sat down with the guy who ended up being a truck driver for Walmart. And I kind of did that. I did exactly what you're saying. You know, I probed into him, was asking questions, was trying to, like, you know, dig underneath the surface to get a better idea of what he was like. So
yeah, like I never thought about these exchanges as a card game because the stakes are pretty small on the one hand of like me knowing more about them than they know about me because it's not like my judgments are particularly important to me. But with Jeff, like I really felt he was kind of analyzing me carefully and he had the ability to do it as a kind of in some ways, an outsider himself on a variety of fronts. The other thing with Jeff is that we were driving through, to Oxford, which is a liberal college town, and yet on the way there, we talked about racism quite a bit with Jeff, but we were driving on the way there, and there are, like he said, yeah, there are some buildings here with Confederate flags, and in driving through the rural area to this college town, and I was like, huh. And it kind of, I mean, he said that he would be like nervous living here, and of course I could like I just don't think about different perspectives that much. Yes, but like whenever I drove by a Confederate flag, I always thought it was goofy because well, it's more than goofy because it represents a political system where black people were property. But aside from that, I thought it was pretty goofy since, of course, Ulysses S. Grant was born in Ohio, and if somebody would put up a Confederate flag, actually after the Civil War, they would themselves be lynched. And so it's just, a ridiculous symbol, but it was interesting to kind of drive around with someone who had a kind of a understandable visceral reaction of danger to those flags because, like, um, well, I mean, for obvious reasons. Okay, so Brian, yeah, did you ever? What are your thoughts about this narcissism? Do you think it's more narcissistic to give information or to swallow it like a reptile?
I don't know. I typically hang back and learn about people, and my wife tells me I'm very judgmental and stuff. So obviously, I'm doing one of those things.
Yeah.
But the thing that kind of I'm also as much as I'm sickened by people, I'm also kind of fascinated by them, and so when I'm hanging back, I wonder about certain things, like Jeff, for example. Like I wonder if that whole thing of him like being deluded about seeing the younger girl, if that has ever worked for him. Like, has that ever worked out? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like I want to ask him a question. Like, it's like asking people who catcall. Like, does that ever work? Because I don't think that it does. You know, like, and
But I mean, he's not harassing or doing anything like
sure, but does
inappropriate.
he intend to make his delusion into like a reality at some point? Does he intend to ask this girl out at some point? Like, has that ever worked? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I highly doubt. I mean, it's kind of a deluded fantasy that maybe sustains him because he's kind of a lonely guy, just interacts with his family. And
Gotcha.
so, like, for a lot of them, like this job, small talk, and all these lab assistants, not even, just interacting with them was a big part of their life. Whereas for me, I always just want to get the fuck out of there. Like, all these
Sure.
guys make small talk and know each other's name, where I just fucking run out of there as soon as I can. All right, so that's basically it with Jeff, and now let's actually move on to something interesting. Now, Django appeared a little late to the stream. I don't know if he's still here, but um, yeah, he said got a notification 45 minutes late. However, those 45 minutes were complete trash, and now we're heading into something that could redeem the stream. Now, Brian, could you describe specifically what exactly were you doing at this strip club in Houston, Texas, or was it
El Paso, Texas. Yes.
Okay?
What was I doing in the strip club? I
Yeah.
was sometimes I was filming naked women.
Yeah.
Sometimes I was taking still photos of them.
Mhm.
Sometimes I was speaking with the owner and looking at naked women with some of my coworkers, the salespeople and another producer.
Mhm.
So that was my job. And
Why were you filming these ladies?
oh, so yeah, let's let's go there. I would film these women to mainly as B-roll for television commercials. So I worked as a producer at actually a cable affiliate, and we got the contract to make television commercials for a local strip club. At first, this was not really something that was common on the air. You wouldn't normally see a strip club commercial on a cable channel.
Yeah.
But I guess we're kind of into breaking ground, and my general manager was just all about any fucking amount of money whatsoever. So he sort of bent the rules a little bit, and they started to advertise on the air. Obviously, we weren't advertising on Nickelodeon or anything like that, but it'd probably be like late night sports, Sports Center, ESPN, that type of stuff.
Okay. All right. So let's check out some of Brian's work right now. Now, is this uh, the the Boss Show trailer must see? Is this your work? Is this?
My work. This includes some of my work. We had a studio and a green screen. This is mostly David's stuff, but he utilized a lot of my in studio footage and did a very bad key on the green screen so that you can see all the chroma flutters and everything throughout it. So I can't take credit for any of this stuff.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, it has impressed me. It was. I thought I was back in my college days watching Igmar Bergman with this one. All right, my friends, let's get ready for some action here. Yikes. Jesus.
The Boss Show.
Yeah.
There you have it, guys.
Okay, actually no. All right, so let's I did I did click off a little bit early because there is another important scene I want. This is Brian in action as a professional here.
Oh man, here we go.
I had to can't start at the beginning of this clip because it does show a naked lady.
Ah, yes, I forgot about that.
Look at the smooth operator here, Brian.
Thank you.
Clubs are amazing. There's a rock bar there. Rock bar is awesome. I hosted a party there, and I hang out there every time I'm there. And they always give me my own booth. I go from the DJ booth. I start smoking weed with DJs and shit. It's nice, man. I can't complain. You guys are out of here, right? And I get break.
So nonchalant. So nonchalant.
She had just naked.
It's like she's not even there with Brian. What a male feminist. Just kind of look at this, just looking somewhere, looking into the distance. And yeah, we see a kind of, this is how it's done, Mr. Robbins. You don't want it to be all about her.
Yeah. You've got some real game there, Brian.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Right. It's like, it's autists give no eye contact a bad name. Brian knows how it's done.
Oh man, I love it.
Yeah, you've got to use that eye contact like a tool.
I threw it in there. You know, I was making a lot of eye contact behind the camera, so I didn't feel too bad once I was actually to the point of chatting with her.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's not gonna. I mean, that was 10 years ago. I look back and I see a young man, a young naive man. You know.
I mean, you haven't changed. I wouldn't be able to say it was 10 years ago. So.
Oh, thank you.
Would you mind saying how old you are?
I am 37 years old.
Oh, 37 years old. Kind of, we're in the same age range. I guess I have become paranoid about releasing my exact age, but it really fucking doesn't matter. I'm younger than you.
Oh, okay.
I'm in my. I've recently logged into OkCupid, that stupid website where I set up a profile that I never visit, and I actually discovered my age there because I forgot how old I was.
You forgot?
Yeah, I did forget. I was like, "Holy shit, is this true?" I thought I was younger by a year. All right. So Brian, what is the essence of your experience? Actually, who was the boss? Is this the owner?
Right. Yes. So Darius was the boss. The boss, right? He was the owner. I believe he acquired the club when his brother who founded it, who was an NFL something or other, he was a football player. He passed away. And so Darius came and was running the club. And I mean, it's Darius's club, you know, whatever. But Darius came to us, and we were all very hesitant about, you know, well, what are we going to do? What is this client going to expect? What is the boss going to expect from us? You know what I mean? And I feel like we made him very happy in the first couple of years. But then things started to get a little weird. Because as many times as I went out to lunch with Darius, and as many interactions as we had, which was very frequent, you know, almost once every 3 weeks or so.
Yeah.
He started to things were changing for him. He was doing a lot better. He started to do a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
And what had been a very kind of professional and slightly lonely seeming man all of a sudden had a mini entourage around him a lot more. And this is around the same time that he hired basically a personal videographer to work for him in the business, or the business, as it were. And he started to have a little bit different expectations about what we were doing. And I just told him kind of flat out, I was like, dude, like we really can't show what you're wanting to show on the air. Like, it's just not going to happen. And so that was kind of a point of contention.
I think we've seen enough. We've fucking seen a lot. What more can you show?
Well, that's the thing, is that it was never going to be enough for this guy, because he was desensitized. Do you know what I mean? Like, he worked in this club. He went there every single day. And so if you're going to that kind of environment every single day, it's just going to numb you to anything. So as good as the girls could have looked in the commercials or whatever, he was never going to be happy. Then he got his own videographer who was shooting things inside of the club. And there was a little bit of a violation there, I felt like, because at one point in time, I had pitched Darius on making a reality TV show. Now, I'm a fucking producer, right? Like, I think in terms of story, of like, how do we make this interesting? Like, yeah, it's a strip club, but we also need to have kind of a thread. We need to show who these people are. And I thought that playing up kind of his loneliness and some of the distance that kind of work created with him and his social life would have been.
I'm not sure that this is great, and I would definitely myself watch a reality show about a lonely strip club owner.
Sure.
But I'm not sure that this is what the viewing public completely. I think they want like drama and like.
Right. So yeah, the whole dramatic kind of, the whole fact that we're hanging out with porn stars every week or whatever. That was more the angle he wanted to go. And I'm like, that's cool, but that's just not me, So he set out about doing this trailer, I guess, which was him and David would go around, they'd drive around in his H2 and fucking film him hanging out with porn stars. But at a certain point, like, how exciting is that? Like, how exciting is it to be like, oh, it's just, it's about me hanging out with porn stars. Aren't I so fucking cool?
Yeah.
So my idea was to inject some humanity into it, but then him and David went off in another direction. Darius was being very successful, but then there was a turn, and the turn was, now I want to be in the commercial.
Mm-hmm.
The boss wants to be in the TV commercial.
Yeah.
And so me and my co-producer, we were just kind of like, this is a bad idea. Like, as great as you are, we love you. No one wants to see your face. Like, why? We even made a joke the first time we met with him about the adult video store across the street. This is like outside of the town limits, right? There's an adult video store across the street. And we were talking about the owner of that place and how he needed to have his face all up on stuff. And we were joking around. And now here we were with Darius. He needed to have his face all up on stuff.
A lot of white lawyers are afraid of a powerful black man.
Sure. So we came to this sort of crossroads. We were like, we just don't know. We continued to do the event commercials, but he went as far as to rent a private jet on the runway, filmed with like two or three porn stars, came out and like were in the spot. God only knows what he paid for all that stuff. But we were fundamentally like, this is a waste of money. Like, your money could go so much further. Around the same time, he had these plans to have Ice-T and Coco come to the club and put on a show.
Well, that sounds affordable.
Yeah, I believe that he spent anywhere between $30,000 and $40,000 just to get them out for a few hours.
Oh wow!
So around the time when he was sort of beginning to disintegrate, as a rational business person, he decided to do this iced tea thing. And we're always invited. We're always invited out to events. He kept it really cool with us. Like, everything was fine. We just kind of were like, maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you don't want to go this direction. It seems like you're spending a lot of money on things. Whereas, $30,000 or $40,000, that was his entire, budget for 3 years of advertising with us, and he's going to blow it in one night. So it's like, whatever, dude. So Ice-T comes. I didn't make a commercial for it. I don't even think his videographer made a commercial for it. Nothing was out in the public eye. There's a military base there in El Paso. And you would have figured, like, maybe there would be some younger people to come out. Maybe Coco is like a fucking draw. Maybe Ice-T performed for me and like 25 people, man. Like, it was a really strange night. It was a really strange.
I mean, I like Ice-T a lot. He's a cool guy and has things to say. But yeah, I think that this is like a bit of a boomer rap there, a little outdated. Mr. Robbins, would you swing over there to listen to some Ice-T? Or do you have any reference point for who we're talking about?
I think I've seen Ice-T more than once with his metal band.
Oh, yeah, you have?
Yeah. Well, a Body Count. Yeah.
Body Count.
Yeah, I think I saw him at Lollapalooza and at a smaller club. But I was wondering, as you're saying,
who knew? Who fucking knew? Hey, listen to this. What a fucking coincidence! There are two people here who have seen Ice-T. Who could have known? In the flesh, amazing.
I was wondering, as you were describing this, though, did the owner maybe have in mind that he wanted to go into a different direction with the club, is like trying to present it as like some high-end experience for like players or something like that?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Take it away from the focus on the girls to try to play it off as a bigger experience.
Right, to make it more of a venue or some, social club or something like that. No, he didn't have any plans like that. This was purely about him at this point. This was about his ego. And I mean, to me, he paid pretty dearly for it, considering, he could have bought a new car or something like that. And I can't imagine what that actually ended up costing him. But it was more than a monetary cost, because he looked like a fool. So he had to pull back his budget at that point. And we filmed 3 more commercials for him. And he was pretty much done advertising on television. And then he disappeared for a few years. And I'm not super sure what he's doing right now. I think they revamped like the exterior of the club, but I think he toned it down after that. I think his mom and some other people maybe talked to him and said, "Hey, this is enough now. You've lost everything that you gained."
Well, it doesn't seem like he destroyed the business. He just had like
he didn't destroy the business. No, he didn't. But I believe that they had a pretty major setback. He was having trouble when he came to us. Most businesses, this is the weird thing about television advertising, other than car dealerships and lawyers and shit like that, most small businesses, when they come to you, they are having difficulty. They're like, shit, I need to do something. I need to do something now because I'm not quite making what I was. And so we're usually the people that are like, look, we can try, but we're not making any guarantees here. And advertising for him worked exceptionally well. He wasn't just making money off the door. People were going there and drinking very heavily. It became a party spot for the local military, and he was making a lot of money. It was a lot of flow.
How were the ladies treated there? Aside from the objectification of the whole thing, aside from that, how were the ethics of the club?
I felt like the ethics of the club were a little fuzzy, as with any type of institution like this. Darius himself did not let the women know most of the time that he was the owner. He, in fact, had another person that was the face that ran the club as management. So he was not the owner to any of these girls. So going
Darius
in,
sounds like a fascinating guy. He really sounds like
he
a
is
fascinating.
he really actually is an interesting dude, and that's why I thought like showing the multi-dimensionality of all of his personality plus this interesting setting would have been a decent story,
Mhm.
and that's why I pitched him originally, and he actually got notoriety in the adult film industry. And at one point, him and his videographer were going to the AVN Awards. Like they were up for best club of the year from whatever strip club alliance exists. And as far as I know, they won some awards. So he was actually hot shit for a minute. And I feel like it could have been a thing. It never became anything. Obviously, that was 2010.
But I mean, as far as the ethics, okay, like,
Oh, sure.
did he sleep with these girls? I mean, was there any coercion or anything like that?
From what I saw, there was no coercion. But I think that certain girls were let in to the circle between him and David and sort of the inner sort of circle or entourage or whatever. And when those girls were allowed in, they had a little bit more of an attitude, and you could only assume what was going on. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't want to make any false statements or anything like that. But yeah, like there was probably some shady stuff going on with some of those girls.
Well, I mean, it doesn't sound like too shady. I mean, it's just if all it was happening was like sleeping with the boss, then it's
The boss.
nothing the boss, yeah, nothing too bad. And how were I wonder like how was the clientele treated? Because well, not treated. I mean, how were they perceived? Because I really think of people like men who go to strip clubs a lot as just these pathetic suckers, where you go kind of like Chuck E. Cheese kind of a thing. You're the center of everything. Go dive into the fucking pool of like plastic balls like a moron, except here you just dive into your stupid fantasy and literally all money is sucked out of your pocket. And I do think of them as suckers. Mr. Robbins, are you familiar with Iceberg Slim? Actually, the person from whom Ice-T and Ice Cube got their name.
No, no.
He's a great writer. He wrote one of the best books I've ever read, Pimp. And it's a novel, but it's in many ways a fictionalized memoir of his life. And he kind of describes, I mean, pimps are horrible people. They're cold and they're psychopaths. They're worse than drug dealers and most of these gangbangers as far as coldness. Because they kind of, at least in this tradition, they create a cult around themselves. They psychologically and physically abuse these women and basically make them give over 100% of what they earn, and then kind of throw a few bucks their way in the end, kind of creating that insane devotion. But it's a nice combination of literary language and street lingo pimp, and yeah, like the original kind of word trick as a noun was a description of the sucker, the guy who pays for sex, the kind of almost the bottom of the hierarchy, kind of worse than the prostitute in some ways. And after I've read that book, it kind of realigned my hierarchy and how I viewed these types of interactions, specifically about being the patsy. And I was wondering, Brian, in the club, were they viewed in this manner?
In the club, the whole attitude was just to make sure people are having a good time.
Okay.
And really like and surprisingly so, right? Because I think Darius above others recognized that those people were paying for his lifestyle.
Yeah,
Those people were the ones contributing to make everything happen as it did. So there wasn't any kind of overt gratitude, but he certainly did not, to me at least, view anyone as a trick. I wouldn't have considered myself a trick being there professionally. I did go for enjoyment a couple times, and I had fun times myself. In
Did you
strange,
get a discount?
did I? Oh yeah, I get. I
Yeah.
for whatever reason, I cannot explain this, but I'd walk in, and they would say, "Hey, you're the producer," And I'd be like, yeah, like not knowing who. And I'm just assuming here, but I think Darius was actually watching his cameras, like he had cameras through the entire place, and just said like, hey,
Darius sounds amazing.
yeah, no, he had. I mean, I walked in the first time I walked into his office. It was pretty cool because he had professional video monitors on a huge wall. Like he had like 16 between 16 and 20 monitors. So there were that many cameras in the place, and all of them infrared, so you could see in the dark. And he had a huge aquarium with two baby crocodiles or alligators in it. So I mean, like, this dude was like all about his lifestyle. You know what I mean? Like, he was an interesting cat. So as far as the clientele goes, like he never overtly like disrespected or called them tricks or anything like that. Now the girls, I'm sure that the girls thought of plenty of clients that way, and that's where sort of the rubber meets the road with how dudes are treated, you know. But it was weird because there's different levels. Like there are different levels of strippers. There are the girls who are just working to pay for college, right? There's those girls. There's the girls who
are they real or are they like an archetype?
Well, they're like anything. There are types. They're just these broad types. But these are types that I was able to notice.
But they were real. They were paying for college.
Yes, there were some girls that were just paying for college.
Huh.
And at a certain point, they're fucking done. They typically only do lap dances for dudes that they actually are attracted to. Mm-hmm. So there's not really even a big deal for them, which I thought was like, hey, fuck, like look at them, like they're making their way. And then you have like the little bit older but more professional, like maybe she has her boobs done, you know, like maybe she's committed to this kind of lifestyle. Mm-hmm. She probably wakes up at 3:00 in the afternoon, you know, like there's that type. But then there's the lifer. Mm-hmm. And the lifer is the girl who's working. If you go for a business lunch, that's the girl that's up on the stage. You know, like she's walking around trying to get men into the VIP area.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's the expiration date, to use a crude expression? I'm sorry, I apologize. What is the?
I know. I see what you're saying. I would.
I'm not apologizing to you, Brian. To a hypothetical woman who could be watching this.
I would assume that the you know, the best use by date is something like 40. But there were definitely older women there, older than that at times, at certain times of the day. And those times of the day, you usually only see like truck drivers in there. So, I mean, they're there for a very specific thing. Like maybe there's going to be an arrangement of a rendezvous, you know, at some point.
Oh yeah, I see.
But if you want to know, like if you're the kind of guy who wants to go to strip clubs, my advice is this: you go to a strip club and go into the VIP section and just wait. Girls come up to you. If you don't like them, this is what you say. You say, "I just like to watch." They'll say, "Well, why are you in the VIP?" You say, "Because I'm a player," right?
Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't fucking do that. There are girls who work in the VIP areas that are usually more attractive. They'll get their turn on the stage, but they just wait in the VIP because they don't want to deal with all the losers out on the floor. So that's kind of a different dynamic there.
That's fascinating. This whole thing is fascinating. We should have started with that shit. I'm
sorry that we didn't start with it.
No. I mean, I should have like started the whole strip club thing at the start of the stream. That's
I got you. Yeah. So painting a picture, and then at the very top of the highest echelon of stripper is the feature entertainer, the person who is featured in the advertisement as the event to go see. Right. Mm-hmm. When most of the people are drawn out, they're usually drawn out by a feature star that they want to see. And you can go and get lap dances from them or whatever. But they're going to charge you a lot more. Well, I found myself one night in the shoes of a man who was the object of desire of one of these feature entertainers. Mm-hmm. And she was a little bit older, She was a little bit older porn star who had.
Did you do the no eye contact trick? The alpha.
I did. I actually, when we were shooting, I noticed that I could see her through the viewfinder, obviously, but I noticed that she continued to look at me well after the takes, and I don't think she was just waiting for direction, right? Like, she genuinely either liked me or had judged me as a mark, you know, as a fucking trick. Like, I was gonna be the trick of the fucking night.
Yeah.
So Darius invited me out, as he always did, and for whatever reason, I don't know why, I was bored, something. I decided to go out, and my coworker wanted to go with me, and so we went together. And because we had already established, this is one of the things, you have to establish rapport, right?
Mm-hmm.
You establish rapport with someone. Because we had already established rapport, she started to get very friendly with me. And many, many thoughts started to run through my then innocent mind that, like, I could have sex with this porn star if I wanted to, because she had eventually, like, propositioned me, like, hey, what are you doing after this? And maybe that isn't a super direct proposition, but the way that she was looking at me and touching me and things like that, like, I took this as a proposition. And I had this kind of flurry of thoughts. And at the end of it, it just kind of left me just really down on myself, because it was like, here I was with this porn star who I'd seen her work as a youth, you know, and it was like, I could have sex with a porn star. Do I want to do this? And even the fact that I considered it very briefly, I felt really down on myself. I felt really, really strange. And I didn't like the feelings that ensued, but I basically just was like, you know, I gotta go to the bathroom, and, like, I'm gonna take care of some stuff, and I'll see you out there, you know, I'll see you around. And she moved on, you know, like, she went to another dude and was chatting him up. But it was a strange moment of, like, wow, like, this fantasy kind of thing could in fact become a tangible reality. And I just wanted fucking nothing.
Are you talking about herpes? No, just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. Herpes, all of the strange feelings associated with that, and medications, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I really believe at this point that she was maybe a sex addict, because I can't think of really a better career for someone who's in the pornography industry than just being addicted to sex, if that's even a thing.
I think, I mean, addicted to affection or something, or
Sure.
attention. Yeah, it's it sounds pretty. It sounds sad, but not in the sense of course, nothing is sad about hitting on a Chad like Brian. But yeah, Mr. Robbins, have you been to a? Well, I assume you have. Have you had interesting experiences in a strip club?
Nothing really out of the ordinary. You know, as he's talking about this, and, like, you get a sense for kind of like the hierarchy of patrons. And I've always thought about that, like, some of the places we've gone.
I don't think there's a hierarchy. Like, the hierarchy of patrons is just like a hierarchy of suckers, of like. Well, there's a hierarchy of the ladies. There's the, you know, what's the hierarchy? The idiot who spends the most money.
Well, I've seen what I think is, like, you know, you get a group of, like, rambunctious guys from they're having a bachelor party, or guys like frat boys, you know, and they're coming in there to be rowdy and get drunk and just have a good time. That seemed, I noticed those things as, like, one level. I noticed another level of, like, a guy who would come in on a Friday night. The girls knew him. And of course, this is making a judgment, but he didn't look like the kind of guy who could probably comfortably afford multiple $50 bottles of cheap champagne to have these girls set around him all night.
Yeah.
But you'd see him come in. And to me, that was like a whole other level of sucker right there. So those are two levels, and then actually a friend of mine who was a really bright, well-educated guy who I never thought would have fallen for this, had broken up with a girlfriend. He was really kind of down about it, and a couple of times, because now suddenly she wasn't around on the weekends, we had decided to go out to a strip club. And he met a girl there who was very attractive and who convinced him that she was a single mom, but of all places, attending college over at Miami at Oxford.
Uh-huh.
And she convinced him, was kind of walking a very thin line with him, that this could potentially turn into kind of a personal relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm standing back thinking to myself, how are you falling for this? You're too smart for this. She's stringing you along, to get into your wallet, next Wednesday night. So that's what I'm saying about there being, I guess, a hierarchy of patrons. You've got that guy at the very bottom who's blowing all of his paycheck on those $50 bottles of champagne, and the girls know it. And when he walks in, he gets targeted. So that to me is like the biggest sucker. You've kind of got my friend in the middle, and then the frat guys at the top.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think your friend would be at the top of the sucker hierarchy, I think. I mean, it sounds like
yeah.
He really got invested not to. My only experience at the strip club was when I was manic in Seattle. So you have to picture me walking around at night in Seattle, and I'm wearing like a sleeveless, kind of like an orange, because I was supposed to be like a reincarnated llama. And so I was wearing orange, which is the traditional color of Vatulku, orange or yellow. So it would be, kind of a vest type thing, sleeveless. And I'm wearing like probably like blue shorts, and then I have like my Buddhist Mr. T medallions. That I, with different Om symbols and different shits like that. And I'm just walking around at night and I see a strip club and I just start fucking running toward it. So I get in there and yeah, this girl gives me, I purchased some juice. There are some shady guys around. And this girl like literally pushed herself into my face. Like during the dance, which I don't know. I've never had a lap dance before, but I don't know what it meant. But I mean, she literally made skin to skin contact. So I guess I enjoyed it at the time. However, in retrospect, this is very stupid, and I mean, I don't feel like a full sucker because I was mentally impaired when this happened, and I don't know how much I paid for this pleasure, but probably like $50 or something. I don't know, but it's just it's very goofy to reflect on, and I have no desire to go back. Except, like I was thinking, my dream reality where I'm a full-time creator would demand making more than one video a month, which is I do apologize. If anybody's watching the stream whatsoever, I do apologize about my low output. You can be assured that I have wasted this time in a variety of ways, not just this one. But my apologies. But yeah, in my dream life, I would have a shitty old Cadillac, and I would go to a strip club and just sit in the corner and observe the suckers and just do video editing on my laptop. Like I wouldn't pay for anything except for maybe overpriced juice or whatever they have there, but that would be a very cool place to people watch. All right, so Brian, that was fascinating. Any final thoughts or conclusions about your experiences there? A spy in the house of objectification.
I had a fun time with those days, but I'm glad that they're over.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on from here to actually some paranormal experience you've had, Brian.
All right.
I'm interested in the one in the catacombs where, yes, it's kind of interesting. I mean, it's an unusual topic, and maybe like I'm open to these things, though I don't explicitly believe in them. But um, I think they're interesting to explore.
So I don't think that I necessarily believe in any of these things either. And let me just frame this experience. I don't know what to do with this experience, really. I have absolutely nothing to gain by talking about it because it is pretty strange. I made one video on being a supernatural realist. It's over on the Stalmer Street Journal. And I talk about, I can't even fully remember what I talk about, but I think I talk about seeing figures and shapes down a hallway when I was a small child. So if you believe in the type of sensitivity that one could have toward what we would dub as spirits or entities or whatever the fuck it is, then maybe I have this type of sensitivity. And I shut it away for years. And I visited Paris with my wife, and we had to do the catacombs. It's just one of those things that you have to do when you go. So we went down, and I'm not necessarily into, horror or seeing bones and bodies and things like that. But
would you be disturbed by a mousetrap channel, like a channel that just reviews different mousetraps and shows them in action?
like actually shows the mousetraps working?
Not in the most graphic of ways, but yeah, like yeah.
I don't think I would be disturbed. No, but it wouldn't. I mean, it wouldn't really do anything for me.
Okay, well, it does something for Mr. Robbins, who exposed them to me, and then I showed them on the stream, and like 1/3 of the stream left, and then some people unsubscribed, and I went back into that stream and like redacted it using the YouTube.
Yeah, trust me, Brian. I had the same feeling going into it too, but 3 hours later, it really sucks you in.
Yeah,
I'll have to give it a shot. I'm open. I'm open.
This is a strip club equivalent for Mr. Robbins. This is where he gets off.
This is where he gets off.
Yeah.
So for me, I don't want to fuck dead bodies or anything like that. Like I just wanted to see the catacombs. Like I just wanted to see the catacombs and go through and like experience the history or whatever. And I'm not really like a big time believer in any of this stuff. Like I've seen, the ghost bros, the ghost adventures or whatever it is on like Travel Channel. And what I find funny about that, continuing to frame this whole experience, some of the shit, like I understand that those dudes are faking like pretty much everything, but the way that they describe things, like the way that they describe feeling things, is pretty much what I experienced.
Yeah.
So you have to go down. You go down into these tunnels. If you've never been before, like you go down underground very, very far. So for a while, you're just walking down a spiral staircase. And before you get to the actual catacombs, you have to walk through these very short tunnels. So, I'm not that tall, but I had to crouch over to walk through these things. And you're walking through them for quite a while, and then you finally get to the entryway, and it says, like in French, it says like the Empire of the Dead or like the City of the Dead over the entry. And as soon as you walk in there are just walls, retaining walls made of femurs, decorated by skulls, holding, millions of people's bones. And when you first, I don't know if you've seen like fucking human remains, but when you first see that kind of stuff, it is kind of jarring. It kind of like it wakes you up in a certain way. And
how preserved were they?
They are just bare bones. They're between a light brownish color and darker tones.
They're not mummified.
No, there are no mummified corpses or anything like that down there. At least not that I saw. I mean, they may have done that somewhere, but I only saw bones. But getting over the initial kind of impression of these walls of bones and human remains, and it just being right there next to you, I started to feel things like touching me, like touching my face, grazing my face, touching my lips in some cases, touching my hands, grasping my hands. And beyond these physical sensations, I had some kind of emotional urgings, kind of like go this way or stop, or like it's very, very strange feelings that were at once like alien and also just kind of like a tour guide or something. Like it was very strange. I don't know how to describe these things other than it's just a feeling. It's just an urge. The physical manifestations were just as gentle as a breeze, but like a cobweb or something. And this is a cavern system that thousands upon thousands of people pass through.
Mm-hmm.
So there are no cobwebs. Do you know what I mean? Like there's nothing that I could have easily mistaken for this kind of stuff. And my mind was in a place where I'm like, let me just have this experience. And I continued to have these urgings, these sensations on my body, specifically on my exposed skin. And I guess you could get the heebie-jeebies or something like that from the atmosphere. But I was very in tune with myself. Like this was a period in which I was like meditating a lot, and I was just very fucking in tune with myself. And then toward the end, I didn't really know that it was the end of the catacombs that we were accessing, but I felt like this digging into my hand, as if like a nail was digging into my palm. And I just sort of projected out, like, it felt like fear. Like it felt like something was afraid. Like maybe I was going toward an area where they couldn't go or something like that. But I just kind of threw this out there. I was like, well, just come with me. Just come with me. If this is an actual entity, if this is an experience, maybe they can read, that I'm saying, just come along. What is there to be afraid of?
Mm-hmm.
Just throwing it out there, just diving right into the fucking experience of it. And we went around. There's like this weird like pond where like water had collected, and then you face the staircase out, the spiral stairway out. And we just start walking up. We go out. We're out in the daylight, and I look down at my shoes, and they're like covered in this like gray sludge, like this like bone sludge. It was weird. But then after about like 10 or 15 minutes, I started to feel like I was getting the flu. Like I just was sapped of all my energy. I told my wife, I was like, I feel nauseous. Like I feel like I need to sit down. And then I thought about what had happened, and I still had this kind of like this ringing kind of feeling on my hand. And I was like, if you can't be out here, you have to go. And just did kind of like the vocal, like, you have to go, just go. Banishing or whatever. And about 5 minutes later, I felt normal again. And it was just a really, like, I understand, like, people viewing this, seeing me as either fucking crazy or a liar or something. And you have a natural filtration system. I have nothing to gain. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even care about my YouTube channel. And it's strange to reflect on, because I have no idea what this was. Or what they were. If there were entities or spirits or whatever you want to call it. Like, I don't believe in any of this shit. Like, I'm a very well-educated man. I don't believe in any of this stuff. And yet I have this experience with it. And I'm kind of left almost with like this sense of, I don't know what to do with this experience, but I have it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, my perspective is kind of, as long as nobody is trying to make something, have some sort of an agenda with supernatural beliefs, like creating alternatives to scientific medicine, or getting it into politics, and I'm talking here about religion and so on. I really, I'm agnostic, and I don't concretely believe in any of it, but I'm not like a new atheist or hyper rationalist, because it's just so fucking boring to be a total kind of materialist. It's boring.
Yeah, I agree.
So I have no reason to doubt your experience. I mean, it could be psychological in nature, but I
Sure.
don't think that you're making it up, or that I'm kind of committed to proving that it's psychological, or have to invalidate your firsthand experience. Mr. Robbins, have you had supernatural experiences? You told me that um, your mom told you that she loved you once, but then it turned out to be no, I'm just kidding.
No, I've never had anything like that. No, nothing subjective. Nothing whatsoever. Very boring in that regard.
Yeah. Well, in my case, of course, I had these experiences, but they were very natural to me because I was also manic and insane, which I'm not saying that Brian was. I'm just talking about myself here. But yeah, I mean, I did for a couple of months in 2014, I did believe that I was communicating with the Bodhisattva Green Tara, and it was about her sending. It's almost like a schizophrenia type thing where we were communicating. She was sending sentiments and thoughts into my head, but I had to have a pure mind in order to fully receive them. Aside from that, I would distort them with my own thoughts and believe that she communicated with her. But it was almost like a romantic kind of an engagement, a kind of a spiritual strange union where she would tell me little jokes that I forget now, or I would drive around and I would laugh to myself because of the joke she told me. And in this very room, I would prostrate myself repeatedly to Green Tar and others as I was sliding into a horrible depression. But yeah, when this was happening, it was completely natural to me, and I didn't. It wasn't. It was just a part of my reality in a sense. If I questioned it, it wasn't really hyper dramatic, because it was it was kind of questioning, like you're talking on texting with a girl, and it's like, does she love me, does she not, that kind of everyday questioning I had. But yeah, so I can't really say that I had supernatural experiences, because that was just a part of my mental malady. Yeah, so aside from that, as actual external experiences or anything like that, I didn't have it. But like I said, yeah, life is super fucking boring. And actually, Tibetan Buddhism has a well kind of charted out theories and almost like a scientific system for this kind of thing. And the white light that people see when they have near-death experiences in Tibetan Buddhism, it is your mind, your consciousness collapsing into its purest form. So there are different types of consciousness, kind of like the nerve system extending into your body, and they kind of fold and collapse one into another. They partly collapse when you sleep, withdraw, and they completely collapse when you die, and kind of eject into the next existence. And when you see that white light, you're seeing actually the pure nature of your mind. And of course, in Tibetan religion, somebody like the Dalai Lama can actually direct their next reincarnation, whereas we're just thrown around by karma. But the people who met a violent death, or who have a strong attachment to something in the world, their mind doesn't undertake this natural process of transforming itself into the next life, and it gets stuck in this existence without a physical body, and that's how you get a ghost.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I have a question for you in terms of Tibetan Buddhism. Do they have a difference in Tibetan Buddhism between the monastic and sort of the common person belief in terms of the transmigration of the spirit or whatever?
The mind.
Yeah. Do they have
Well,
it?
I mean, I would think that those things would be. I mean, there is a folk Buddhism where you basically, instead of meditating, historically, what people did would accumulate merit to have a better rebirth, and you accumulate merit by doing good deeds, but also by making pilgrimages. And so the folk Buddhism was very different and not as learned as monastic Buddhism, which would also be very different depending on the quality of the monastery. I mean, there were so many monks in Tibet. I mean, some estimates go as much as like 20% of the population, but I don't know. So yeah, I mean, so there would be there are also like for main schools and major minor schools, and I don't know how they would have, but I would think that on the reincarnation, they would be pretty. Those beliefs should be pretty similar, but I might be giving a belief right now a kind of concrete demonstration of one school, but the Tibetan Book of the Dead is is a manual, like one of those guides for experienced practitioners to how to die properly and direct your mind. But effectively, the mind is thrown around by karma, but in kind of certain rare circumstances, you can kind of at that stage you can do things.
Cool.
All right, and this naturally transitions us to being a stay-at-home dad. Now, of course, this is what is Brian's current occupation, and of course, we here on YouTube we look for masculinity. We study masculinity carefully, and we always perfect our alpha nature. Mr. Robbins and I have both enrolled in the police academy under the guidance of Sargon of Akkad, who told us to that it will help us with the ladies. How does being a stay-at-home dad kind of fit into this alpha dichotomy? Well, of course, the first thing is the idea that women are hypergamous, in that they're always looking for a man who's going to be of higher social stature than they are and who will be a provider for them. And it seems like in your case, well, that's not linearly so. Could this theory be wrong?
Do you mind if we take an intermission really fast?
Well, there is no exact way for me to take an intermission, but Mr. Robinson, I can talk about something.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Yep. All right, Mr. Robbins. So you have recently discovered that Joe Biden has entered the presidential race. How many sassy ponies of excitement do you give Joe Biden's entry out of 5?
Oh, I would give that a solid 1.
So, not too excited? Do you think that?
Yeah, not too excited. How do you feel?
But it's kind of the exact same. Do you think a crusty old white man can help us beat back fascism?
Well, some of the things I've considered is, Joe's been there a while. I'm sure he knows a lot of the political ins and outs, which would be an asset. He's a name that can probably draw a lot of money, I would think, as opposed to kind of a newcomer. He's a household name. So he's got a lot of that going in his favor, and a more or less kind of centrist Democrat, I think, not terribly radical. So all of those things would be kind of favorable in my mind, but it just seems like, I've said it before, we seem to be in more of an era of the cult of personality, and I just don't see Joe bringing anything like that to the table.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Joe Biden is kind of goofy, but I did sort of think that a lot of my subscribers, Mr. Robbins, are really kind of out of touch with things that are going on. as far as Joe Biden and what he has done. And I really have a kind of an idea for that's interesting. Even right now, Brian is performing certain tasks that should be done by a woman, I think.
Domestic tasks.
Yeah, domestic tasks. But I do want to pull a Biden on people. You know, if we ever have a meetup at, like, say, Outback Steakhouse for some subscribers, and I think, like, you should, you know, before we begin, I will just be hiding in the bathroom, and you will be chatting them up.
Great.
And then I will sneak out of the bathroom and go behind them and start sniffing their hair. What do you think about that?
And touching them? That sounds like a great. I think I'd be a great warm-up act.
Yeah, I'll start.
That'd be a great icebreaker.
Yeah, out of nowhere, I start massaging them from behind, and then I'll sniff their hair, and then I'll just grab them in the headlock if they resist to get a little bit more of, you know, sniff different parts of their. There are a lot of sense in there that I'm sure Joe Biden knows well, and why should I not explore them myself, Mr. Robbins?
Sounds like a great plan.
Brian?
Yes.
You have really a powerful mop of hair there. You really have strong, thick hair.
Thank you. Yes, I do.
I would like to pull a Joe Biden on them and just bury my face in there.
Pull a Joe Biden?
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, I think Joe would have a lot of fun sniffing your hair. And
yeah, he probably would.
Does your wife like to stroke it?
My wife loves my hair. I can say very easily I'm blessed with a nice head of hair here.
Yeah, actually, so am I. Like, my hair is very, like, kind of thick like yours, but also very soft, and ladies like to run their fingers through them.
Yeah, it just kind of stands up like this. It just does its own thing. I let it go to a certain point until I can't stand it. I shave it all off.
Yeah, all of it?
Well, not to the skin, but I do the sides really, really short.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah, I don't like the heavy presence of hair on my head. All right, so going back to the question, when did you start? For how long have you been a stay-at-home dad?
So I'm still a stay-at-home dad. I've been a stay-at-home dad for 3 years, and it has been an incredibly difficult phase in my life. One of the only things that's gotten me through it is just recognizing that it is a phase, and that eventually my child will be in school all day, and I can continue at that point like a normal person again.
So is this like the gender roles kind of pressing on you?
The gender role of being a woman, or what do you mean?
I mean that this is not stereotypically what I guess.
Yes, that I'm. So again, like, so I just have this thing. It's just my thing. Maybe it's your thing. I just don't care what people really think of me. So those unless I had internalized those, which I have not. I have not internalized the male-female social roles. It doesn't really affect me. So I don't really think of it in those terms. But I do have observations because of my experience as to how other people view me and what I do, and how it is kind of, it's kind of different. And in a way, it's very privileged, even though we're going in debt to do it. Neither one of us wanted to have our child in all day, just round the clock daycare from the time that she was 3 months old.
Yeah.
We didn't want to do that. So because of our values, and because I had been going to school, I would have been coming out. I went back to school, and I would have been coming out and going into the job market, basically either looking for something I had experience in, a la, making strip club videos, or starting out fresh in a new career doing something, who knows what. But my wife had already had an established career path, and was well into a new position and was, thinking about changing things up, adding some things. And I'm like, who am I to disturb that? Like, the natural progression here is just for me to stay home with our child.
So what's the difficult part then? Like not being in the workforce?
What's the what?
What's the difficult part? You said it was the most
The
difficult
part is actually being a good parent.
Nice.
That's the difficult part, because in my view, it could be very easy to be a bad parent. That it wouldn't take much effort at all to stick your kid in front of the television or hand them a phone or a tablet and just let them go all day. For me, it was about engagement with my child, even if it was just playing with her, getting everything right in her world and making sure that she was taken care of so that she had the sense of security. She's not laying there crying all day like some kids. She's not just laying there in a bucket all day like some kids with flat heads,
In a bucket? What are you talking about?
Well, I mean, that's just a slang term for like a little baby, holder, like a little sleeping, what do you call them? Like a little rocking thing that babies sleep in. Some parents just leave their kids and the back of their heads just gets flat, and so they have to wear a helmet to reshape their cranium.
Holy shit!
It's actually a pretty normal thing. It's terrible. It's terrible, but they had like posters at our pediatrician. Our pediatrician's office had posters on the wall of like, does your kid need this helmet? Check out the X42 version of, it's like just like shocking stuff that you'd be like, why do you need that? And then until you
reshape the head, clearly.
And then you realize that most parents actually don't have a choice. They have to continue to work. They have to put their kids in daycare, even though it's taking a huge chunk of one of their incomes or maybe even an entire income. They have to do it in order to maintain whatever it is they got. And that's just a sad place to be in.
Yeah. So the one kind of insightful, now I'm not a parent, but the one insightful thing I've ever heard Peterson said that it's one of his 12 rules for life is that he said, you will take revenge on your kids. And basically his idea was that eventually you will lash out on your kids for something they've done. And instead of kind of going that path, for that reason you have to have clear borders and discipline so that you are consistent, so I guess that inevitability doesn't happen too often. Would you agree with that?
For me, no, but that's because I recognize the sacrifice in being a parent, which maybe Peterson doesn't do. I don't have bitter feelings toward my child. I mean, it's stressful. It's terrible. You're doing the same thing every day at the same time if you're doing it right at all. And it becomes very fucking repetitive and mind-numbing, and you lose yourself. Like, the truth is that as great as, like, meditation and how great it is, like, there is no fucking destruction of the ego like staying at home and raising this small entity that has no choice but to get every single thing that they need from you. And when you're focused on doing that 12, 13 hours a day, that's more profound than any meditation practice I've ever experienced. And I feel like stay-at-home parents or stay-at-home mothers in general just kind of recognize this. And my experience is, this is not fucking normal. This is the hardest thing I've ever done. Like, it's not like I've shied away from work my life. Like, I've done hard things. This is the hardest thing by far. And there's reward in it because you feel a sense of accomplishment through your child. You feel, pride in the things that you're doing and that you're adhering to your values. For me, I feel a sense that I have way more of an emotional connection with my daughter than other fathers in particular. That, like, she's going to trust me and come to me for things that she needs throughout her life because of this. You know,
What would be Brian's one rule for raising a child? I mean, of course, there isn't just one, but what would be like your one thing if you could offer a primal cry before this, you know, whatever, fucking in some situation across the mountain to a prospective dad or lady mother?
um,
One thing.
yeah, I can think of a few things. Probably the most profound is um, lose your expectations of yourself and the child and be present in what you're doing. And I think if you do that, you really can't go wrong.
Yeah,
I think it's hard unless you're some kind of sociopath. I think it would be difficult to go wrong
yeah,
by being present, because if you internalize all of the expectations of society upon yourself, and you put yourself in the position of like, how am I going to explain, as I have intellectually many times said to myself, how the fuck am I going to explain to a future employer, yeah, I raised my child at home for 3.5 years or 4 years or 5 years, and that's just my value set, that's just what I chose to do. How am I going to explain that? And it's difficult if you feel all of these things weighing down on you that you project out in front before you in your life.
hmm
And
well, I mean, you are in a liberal state. I mean, I think they could.
yeah, yeah, there are plenty of people in this kind of different situation as I am in here. In other places in the country, it may not be the same. In other places, the world is certainly not the standard. So it is kind of an exceptional experience. But we don't give stay-at-home moms enough credit. If you think that being a stay-at-home mom is easy, like, I'm sorry, it doesn't matter what you do. It's harder. It's harder in different ways.
Like when your child was born, the first moment your world has shifted and the child was at the center of the world, right?
Absolutely. When my daughter was born, she, you have this 9 or 10 month long anticipation of, man, like this is gonna happen, and when it happens, like everything is different, and that was exactly the feeling. It was everything is different from here on out, and there's an amazing bonding experience between me and my daughter. I had an amazing bonding experience. I'm not sure what the experience was between her and her mother. I think that postpartum hormones kind of kick in as soon as the mother gives birth, and my wife describes a very difficult time during that period. So my experience was one of complete, like, seeing myself in the great chain of life, like a very fucking, like, almost metaphysical experience, a strange experience. But that bonding moment when she looked up at me and I looked down at her is just like, you see everyone that you love. You see your parents in their face. You see yourself. You see your partner. It's fucking weird. It's
Yeah,
a weird experience. But when you see all of that at once, like, that's your bond. That's
yeah. Here's where I think where I'm a psychopath, where I'm not sure that would happen. I think I would look at a baby and say, "This is a human organism." And this is psychopathic. I apologize. It was like an undeveloped brain with very limited kind of perception, with weird reflexes. If you like um, stroke their feet, with ability to like breathe underwater or something. I could just go that clinical route. I'm not sure that I would just fucking stress out and be like, that's why I should not only not father children, but also not touch a woman ever. Mr. Robbins, you strike me as somebody who would make a good stay-at-home dad. Like, you're very even-tempered, as far as I know. You seem to be very like responsible, and right, have that kind of ethic of responsibility.
Wow. Well, thank you. Um, yeah, but I don't really picture myself as that.
Uh,
Strangely, you're at least the second or third person who's made that comment, and it's just not something that I see in myself at all, for multiple reasons. And as you're giving your thing about The child coming into the world and not having that kind of immediate emotional connection to it. I'm very fearful that I would have a similar response, more in line with the one that you're talking about. I even noticed that in like walking around the grocery store, somebody will have like a little infant, and it seems like there's even an expectation many times by the mother that everybody who walks by and notices the child, that they're at least going to give some cutesy little recognition of it, which I never do, and I almost purposefully don't, because it's like it's an infant. I've seen a million. This one's,
they all look the same.
yeah, it's no different than any other. But yeah, it's not only that, but the stress level. That's in mentioning or saying that I'm even tempered. There's a whole lot of things that go on below the surface, that stress that I don't deal with very well, that doesn't really manifest itself.
Okay. Well, I guess maybe Mr. Robinson's calm persona is a lie, kind of like my kind of immigrant persona at work. I think in my case it would be, hey, little Boris, it's time to go to the quiet box, to the quiet cage. It's fucking Papa Ivan, stay-at-home Ivan. You've made enough noise. I think we watched 15 minutes of Dora the Explorer, and that's enough. It's time to go to the quiet cage. Anyway, no, it's unfortunate. Like right now there are 2 children here in the house, not in my room. But yeah, and they're cute, but I like never interact with them, and I'm not sure that they know that I'm here fully, because I just like sneak away into my room, and they're kind of in the basement with their parents who are staying here as their house is getting built. It's my stepbrother. And yeah, we never even like acknowledged each other existence in this time frame. I think they glanced at me once, and they're cute, and I think kids are cute. Like, I do have another psychopathic thing to say about kids, is that there seems to be like, of course we all kind of operate on rewards, in part on like um reward mechanisms, Pavlovian mechanism, and it seems like with kids, it's like I woke up one day on Easter, and hopefully nobody in my family will hear this, and I mean nobody will hear this at this point in this fucking stream. But I look down, like I'm on the second floor, and there by the fireplace there are 2 fucking thrones. There are 2 tiny princess thrones on Easter, and there are like candy all over them and little toys, and I was like, what the fuck? This is fucking Easter. This isn't even like Christmas or anything. Like, why do they need like these gifts now? And there is a sense like kids kind of learn how to provide meaning to adults, like a symbiotic relationship, like these little insects that ants harvest for their nectar. Like, they know how to release that cuteness to get more things, and a lot of their time is spent like acting in a cute manner, kind of like pets do, like by tilting their head, things like would never do in their wild. A wild cat or dog wouldn't do a lot of these behaviors. um anyway, Brian, any thoughts on this psychopathy? Or
I can say, like, before I had a child, I had all the same type of thoughts. Like, I had the same fears, maybe even deeper fears in some senses, that I would treat this baby like it wasn't even a person or something. But that all goes away. That all goes away when you have the experience. And you're biologically programmed for that to work out that way. And I have no idea how it does. It just does. And it's worked for however long we've been around.
I mean, I am a man child, and I hate being a man child. Like, I hate living, in my mother's house. But I mean, I can blame it on bipolar, but I'm really disorganized in my thoughts. And so I do like as few experiences as I had with the ladies, and they were very few. I at least thank the non-existent archetypal lobster for the fact that I never, got somebody pregnant, because that would be a total disaster. It would be a total disaster, and I could see where I could be a horrible father, and yet continuously an absentee fucking father, and yet continuously feel this nagging sense of guilt in the back of my head. And I think in my case specifically, it would be a very risky experiment unless we were well cushioned by money to undertake procreation with a hypothetical lady, because it would just I don't want to take a risk of my kind of benign narcissism where I just make self-deprecating jokes and am basically lazy and have a limited capacity for sacrifice for others, none of which I like. To risk it into flipping into having total irresponsibility toward a child, even though these hypothetical uh, instincts could kick in. I mean, if the engine doesn't start and you're stuck in the middle of like a frozen highway in Alaska, that's not something you want to risk around with.
Right. Yeah. No. Don't. If you have a deeper sense that that would be the case, and there are kind of echoing patterns in your life that you're able to recognize, just don't do it, man.
Yeah.
Just don't.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, that's what I'm planning on. Mr. Robbins, are you afraid of having a child?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I need to have, I need to have a woman around first.
Yeah. Oh, you're not a self-inseminating hermaphrodite?
And yeah, that's not.
Well, fuck you then. Why did I have you on the stream all these?
I mean, at this age, I mean, yeah, it's not something. It's not definitely not a responsibility I would look forward to taking on. I think I would be much more, emotionally mature to be able to handle it far better than I would have at a much younger age. But
I mean, the thing about it is, like, we live in a society where there is no real community outside of your family. And as you get older, we're also kind of ageists, and because of the continuous like change uh, in technology, you just become more and more relevant, and kind of nobody really gives a shit about you because old people don't spend that much money. And so in that case, like, it would be nice to have a family or somebody who cares about you. It's kind of like with alcoholism. If you're young, it looks kind of cute. And the same thing with my like isolation, where I've been pretty isolated my whole life, and it's kind of getting less and less cute with time, and is going to be very not cute in old age if it perseveres. So in that case, having kids is nice, but I will do everything in my power to not have sex with women, or at least without the protection.
There's always
Yeah.
strip clubs,
Yeah, unless there's a lot of money around, in which case it's always, because I was like raised by my grandmother, and there's no reason I can't find a Russian babushka to raise my children. Okay, so would you say that have you ever been explicitly judged, Brian, for being a stay-at-home dad?
No, not overtly. I think that there is judgment from my wife's brothers and father. I think that they probably try to pass judgment on me because they come from a very patriarchal arrangement, specifically Mormons.
Oh.
So yeah, like they have a very set view of what the man does, and even though one of her brothers is a total atheist fucking asshole Jordan Peterson fan, he I think he still holds those views. I think he still is like, well, the man should be the fucking provider, and the man should be doing this, and the woman's job is to be at home with the child, with the children. Mm-hmm. In that Mormon kind of tone. That, so I think that they do judge, but I think that
Do you just avoid them, or
what's that?
do you just avoid them, or?
Yeah, they live across the country, so I don't have to deal with them.
Yeah.
Thankfully, yeah, I have to deal with their judgments on occasion when we go visit, or if they visit up here. But no, I understand why those judgments form. I understand why people have them. I don't necessarily think that they're ignorant, because women do have certain biological things that are in them. Like my wife, for example, responds when my daughter cries. She has like an adrenal almost response. Like that just doesn't happen with me. So in one sense, like that's good, but it's also not so good if we were in, if we're out in the woods, like that wouldn't be so good, because God knows what's happening if your child is crying and you're exposed to nature. So I am glad that there are, people who are able to think differently about these kinds of things and not necessarily rush to judgments, because you don't know anyone's life situation out of the gate, And everyone who's come up to me or tried to talk to me just in passing with my child, like they're all pretty nice. And as I said before, I don't really care for people, so it doesn't really affect me one way or another, whatever they think. But I do understand why they arrive at those kinds of judgments, and
Yeah.
I just think that they're very basic.
Yeah.
I think that's an undeveloped view, and I think it's undeveloped because we live in a hyper specialized civilization,
Yeah.
So I have broader viewpoints on that, but that in turn, that's just my judgment of them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I was raised effectively by my grandmother. My parents really didn't raise me. They just kind of pursued their careers. And unfortunately, like my grandmother is really old school. Like you have like Italian grandmothers or like very old school. And she basically like treated me like a little aristocrat and like completely spoiled me.
Mm.
And so I do have these like kind of like not kind of doing routine tasks. I mean, my grandmother literally still cleans this room that I'm in right now. She's like in her 80s and she lives across the hall. I don't tell her to do it, but it's kind of like something that gives her meaning, on as depressing as it sounds. I mean,
Sure.
she's here in like America, obviously doesn't speak English and so on, and she always like discusses the different things and always tells me that like I'm undernourished and that I need to eat more, because she grew up in World War II during starvation times. So yeah, I did have that experience of, but certainly my dad was not hyperactive in the raising of me as a child, even though we do have a good relationship overall. Um, Mr. Robbins, were you spoiled as a child?
No, not at all. No, I was raised singly by my father, and we didn't have a.
Oh, this is interesting. Yeah, you were raised by your father.
Yeah, and an only child, and yeah, as we've talked about, grew up in very rural Indiana, pretty kind of middle to lower middle class, working family. So yeah, I was not spoiled.
Yeah, sounds pretty horrible there. every, would you rather have like teleported back in time and like turn into a baby and be raised by Brian?
I don't know. I hate to cast judgment on anyone, especially on my father. It couldn't have been easy,
Yeah.
A single. I try to picture myself being 21 years old and having 20 or 21 and having an infant thrown at you that you're suddenly responsible for caring for on your own while trying to have a job. It's like, man, that's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that's really hard. I'm not in that kind of situation.
yeah, I try to cut them as much slack as I can.
Yeah.
But I would say, Brian, I mean, I've got friends in similar situations. I don't think, I'm not sensing that your situation is really becoming that uncommon anymore.
Hmm.
I mean, with the way the economy's going, things like that, like you say, the cost of like putting your kids in daycare.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's crazy here. It's
yeah,
actually the highest in the country here.
right. From what I understand, it's like you said, why would you want to go out and work 40 hours a week
Yeah,
to come out negatively?
right.
Yeah.
Back in the Soviet Union, where I grew up, we had free kindergarten, and would take little naps in the middle of the day. There were literally beds there. So yeah, so that was the life. You didn't have to worry about it. All right, Brian, do you have any final thoughts on being a stay-at-home dad, that honorable profession? And I'm not being ironic.
Um, I know we started with the notion of like hypergamy, and maybe it's too late to run off in that direction, but I would like to say that in the case of me and my wife, we really, that does not apply. And maybe it doesn't apply for certain reasons. Like maybe hypergamy is actually the general thing that happens, but I consider my wife kind of an exceptional person, and in our partners, we wanted equals.
Mhm.
And so there wasn't necessarily like financially, I was better off in some senses. I'm certainly not now, you know what I mean? Like, but when we first got together, I was better off in certain senses, and she was better off in other senses. Um, I was pretty far along in a video producer career, and she was looking at going into a master's program and all these other sorts of things. So I don't think that really factored in, and I don't consider myself like some alpha or something like that. I know that incel thought these days is sort of like created this mentality that otherwise was just buried or was not there prior to this era of women are only trying to sleep with certain types of men. Like there's out of 10 men, there's only 3 dudes that all the girls want to sleep with.
It's the 80-20 rule.
Yeah, right. Like
Three was overdoing it, Brian. We
What's
know 3 was outdoing it. It's really the 20% are total
oh,
check.
it's only two out of, yeah. No. I mean, that's what they say. And I think that there are ideological influences behind a lot of that thought. And a lot of these dudes, like, I mean, I see it. I'm subject to those types of thoughts and judgments when it's like, oh, you're a stay-at-home dad, so you're the fucking bitch, like, or what, however you want to frame it. And that kind of thought just doesn't enter in to my life. And I think that is telling, in the sense that a lot of these dudes' worldview is so kind of fucked up, because we live in a fucked up, we have a fucked up society right now. We have a strange social order. And they've internalized the social order in their minds. They focus on these external traits. Why aren't they getting women? They've normalized like this dating fucking guru bullshit culture.
The reason why you escape the curse of hypergamy is because you must have very thick wrists, like I do.
Is that what it is? Dude,
Yeah, look at this fucking wrist.
Is that a thick wrist?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why I have a wife, and why I have sexual partners, I guess.
Yeah,
it could be the brow line, right?
Yeah. No, I think it's your thick, powerful wrist. Even my wrist.
It's my wrist. This is what I have to think.
Yeah.
So, that kind of thought, it's very strange, because you're focusing on these very superficial things. And on top of it, you're also judging women as having hyper superficial standards, when, like, I understand like the male drive, right? Like I understand, like, when you look at a woman, you're seeing certain things. You're judging that woman by those, by her virility or whatever. But when a woman is mature not mature like in a fucking pornography sense. Like when a sorry, when someone is sorry, I lost my train of thought. Just getting text messages.
You were said that you don't look at women like not mature in
Like
in a
women,
porn sense. You said for some reason.
women who are developed, women who have, you know, done some work on themselves, aren't going to be looking for the same kind of thing that men straight out of the gate are looking for in their partners. Like women have very different fucking standards for what they want. And that might be, you know, an emotional perception. That might be a caring, you know. You have to start to like think outside of your singular perspective on this shit. And so like there was a weird trend. Like I don't know if you ever followed like the dating fucking guru shit. Like you know what I'm talking? The pickup artist, right? The pickup artist thing. At a certain point, there was a shift where these dudes started talking about the inner game. And this is actually when I came on board, when I was like, holy shit, like these guys are talking about useful things to help men develop. And I think that's still very fucking relevant and has somehow been pushed aside. Because if more of these incel type dudes worked on themselves from an emotional place and just a self development kind of, you know, arena,
Yeah,
they wouldn't necessarily be facing blackpilling themselves and just like, oh, like it's fucking over. I acknowledge that it's over, and then running down this fucking rabbit hole of like self-hatred and like hating women and all that shit that comes with it. Like it's so strange to me.
yeah, they're just in the gutter. Like there is this gutter called incel, and people leap into that gutter who are just have different kind of mental illnesses, and then they start blaming it on women, or maybe they do have objective reasons as to why, for our superficial standards, they might be less likely to be mates. But fuck it. Like I'm gonna say right now this about incels. I go to a fucking therapist. My fucking therapist is like, he stands like right here next to me. This is his actual fucking height. He's like 4 feet, you know, he's like 4 something feet tall, and he doesn't have knees. Like he doesn't have knees.
Wow.
Like he was born with a rare defect where I guess like part of his, like he has feet, but he doesn't have knees, so he walks by shifting like from side to side. And this motherfucker, well, this guy who I admire for his perseverance and positive attitude, he has like 2 jobs, he has a wife, he has a kid. You know, he's like 4 feet tall and doesn't have knees, for fuck's sake.
Right.
Anyway, so
it worked out for him.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's maybe his wrists. It could be his wrists, really.
It could be his wrists. It could be his fucking attitude.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
he's
it's easy to push aside that responsibility. Like maybe I'm a shitty person, you know? Did these dudes ever take a look in the fucking mirror?
I think, well, the thing is that, it's like, it's just the different dudes, different alienated guys who take that route, and then they fuck themselves even further, and they like encourage themselves into a chain of suicide.
Right.
And some of them have legitimate issues, but they've just turned themselves into assholes by fucking hating women. I mean, I don't idealize anybody. I don't idealize like, okay, fuck it. This is a crude simplification, but I don't idealize in the way that some leftists do women and minorities and so on. Like I don't idealize or demonize anyone, and I don't idealize women, and they do have superficial standards just like I do and everybody else. But
sure,
it's the incel shit is it does piss me off because I am the ultimate incel. And
you're like the OG incel? Is that
I am the OG. If like people only knew, I am the OG incel. Like I'm just not gonna get into my specific aspects of my minuscule sexual experiences, but well, anyway,
things are kind of different now because, you know, kids are having sex a lot younger, they're exposed to pornography on their cell phones at a very young age, whereas, you know, some of us had to go sneak into our father's closet to find the pornography.
Well, no, they're exposed to pornography at a young age. That's true, but people are having like less sex today than ever.
See, that's interesting.
Yeah, like there's like the millennials have less sex than the previous generations, and I think fewer sexual partners as well. I mean, it's probably even like people in relationships have less sex.
I mean, I didn't get a lot of play in high school. You know what I mean? Like,
but it looks like you were very good at the strip club. you should teach like pickup artists with your like lack of eye contact game, because I really like that. She really kind of was there trying to get your attention.
Yeah.
Being coy with that body language.
Yeah.
You know, I think I was just numb to everything at that point. So if there was any like sense of like, I don't really give a fuck about what you're saying, like what's turning over in my head in that clip is like, how many times have I masturbated to Jenna Hayes and she's talking to me right now? Like, it's really fucking weird. Like, and I'm just caught up in that experience of having those thoughts go through my head. Like, this is really strange. This is really bizarre. Jenna Hayes is telling me about some party that she hosted. Okay, this is my life right now.
Yeah.
And that stuff is just sort of running through my head as it was like the third time that I worked with her. So we were just chatting like normal people do, who work together and see one another. And it's super weird. It was just super weird. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not like a huge fan of the moving images of that sort, and like it kind of try to avoid them. They're like too graphic to me, and I've just been trying to like narrow down libido. Like male libido has recently become like disgusting to me in some ways. So I think it shouldn't be indulged for aesthetic reasons at certain times. All right, my friends. Well, this has been one awesome and informative stream. If there's one thing I can take away from it, is that there are actually strippers who actually go to college. Like, I thought this was a myth or a false archetype, but fucking Brian has confirmed that this is a real thing. So maybe that old joke about I helped her get to graduate from college. Maybe it's not such a joke. You just have to look for the hot ones who don't want to give you a lap dance.
Exactly.
Yeah, that right. Don't trust that fucking raggedy dame who says she's going to technical school. Don't fucking trust that. It's that hot one who's never gonna even give you a lap dance and respect you and fucking reject you, just like back in college or whatever when you went to college. Anyway, Mr. Robbins, I have a final question for you.
Okay.
Now, a week ago, we have made a stupid video for Patreon where you have sampled a number of Russian foods.
Correct.
Do you remember any of them? Like the fishes? I actually still have the package from the fishes.
Oh, I think I remember most. We had the Stalinist bologna, the fish, the pine sol cola.
Yeah,
the grass.
It wasn't a pine cola, but whatever. It just had different herbs. Mr. Robbins, have you reconsidered those ratings on any of them, or has any which one would you want to taste again? If you would you want to taste any of them again? And if you were forced to taste any of these foods again, which one would it be?
Well, can I mention the one that I would not taste again, and the one that I was the most disappointed?
Yes.
Which would be the kielbasa.
The kielbasa.
Because I've gone back, and something about this just didn't strike me as being right. The whole notion of kielbasa and this thing turning out to be essentially Russian bologna. So I went back and I Googled kielbasa. And what comes up is Polish kielbasa. Now, are you familiar with a smoked sausage or a Polish kielbasa as opposed to a Russian kielbasa?
No, this is just a kielbasa is just a type of sausage, and it could be anything.
Well,
Like it's just yeah.
that was the confusion. I was expecting something more like a smoked sausage. So the bologna was profoundly disappointing. In
It
that
was
regard.
that bologna was authorized by Stalin, and it had a better, more meaty recipe at its outset. But we ate the revised outset. But aside from that, anything positive, you fucking bastard?
Well, I did like that pine sol cola. That was fine.
Okay.
Um, and the ice cream treats were good.
Okay. All right. I did remember you pouring out that cola though, Mr. Robbins. I don't.
Well, yeah, I was having to drink too much too fast.
Okay. Okay. Well, fuck you, you fucking liar. Fake news, Robbins. Well, anyway, thank you so much for Brian for teaching us so much about strip clubs and paradoxically enough, parenthood and also extraordinary experiences. It was really a cool stream, and I hope the folks enjoyed it. And I'm sure some might watch it later. My friends, thank you for watching. I'm sorry for not putting out videos. Thank you for watching. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.